the blast, there was a political blame game between President Maithripala Sirisena and the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. They both belong to different political parties, and they were trying to blame each other, and both said the intelligence warning, 3 warnings from India came, and they were not given these intelligence warnings in advance. If they had known earlier, then they would have taken action, immediate action. And then the president asked the police commander to resign, and then he was sent on leave because he didn't want to resign. He was sent on compulsory leave. And then the defense secretary, Hemasri Fernando, resigned. What these 2 men did, they appeared before a parliamentary select committee hearing on what were the failures, how these attacks happened. They testified before the parliamentary committee, and which is appointed by the parliament, the speaker. And they said the president was not easily reachable. And in fact, the police chief said the president asked him to take responsibility, and then he would resign, and later on he would be given a diplomatic posting. Both deny the charges that they were responsible or there were lapses because of their inaction. What many people would see this as these 2 men are being made as a scapegoat. However, the president's side would say, no, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry found that these 2 men did not take enough action, and that's why the police are now taking action following this Commission of Inquiry.
And what might be the outcome?
Now, these 2 men can, they have the opportunity to mount a legal challenge. Now, only one commission of inquiry, that is appointed by Maithripala Sirisena, who is the president, who is under intense criticism for his failure to convene Security Council meetings. And then the parliament, which is controlled by a different political alliance, and they are having their own inquiry. And that is where most of these open hearings are happening. And they are coming out and giving information how the president was not easily approachable, and we could have prevented these attacks if the president had been, more communicable with they can communicate with the other members of the defense forces. So this political wrangling is going to continue for some more time, and the president wants to show that he is taking action, he is in charge. But some would see that as this is part of a revenge, because these 2 men went and appeared in front of parliamentary committee, which the president doesn't approve of, and he says that this committee should be disbanded because he already has one inquiry commission. So these men are being made as a scapegoat. That is how many people would view. But at the bottom line is there were 3 warnings, and the Sri Lankan missionary, the administration, did not take note of that, did not take that note very seriously. In fact, one of them came 2 hours before the attacks that some of the churches will be targeted. And then this political game will disappoint many Sri Lankans, because they want to get to the bottom of this story and then find out how these 8 people, Muslims from Sri Lanka, managed to get through, this huge amount of explosives, come into churches and 5-star hotels and carry out the carnage.
Anne Barasan Ettarajan speaking to Dan Damon. In June, Europe was hit with one of the most significant heat waves of recent history. Last week, France recorded its all-time highest temperature of almost 46 degrees Celsius. Now, meteorologists have said those soaring temperatures are more likely to happen in future as a result of climate change. Our environment analyst Matt McGrath reports.
Attention, canicule. Pour éviter le coup de chaleur et la déshydratation,
a campaign by the French government advising its citizens on how to cope with rising temperatures, as the country last week experienced an unprecedented June heatwave. In the south, temperatures reached 45.9 Celsius, a new national record, beating the old mark by a massive 1.5 degrees. While a huge influx of warm air from North Africa was the immediate cause, researchers and the public alike have been asking just how much of an influence does human-induced climate change have on such events. By coincidence, a group of senior climate scientists happened to be at a conference in Toulouse. They seized the opportunity to carry out an attribution study to determine the main factors influencing the weather. They compared actual temperature observations with climate models that removed the heating caused by humans. They concluded that the probability of the heatwave was increased at least 5-fold by human emissions of carbon dioxide. The lead author, Dr. Frederica Otto from the University of Oxford and the World Weather Attribution Group, says the study also showed the major differences between global warming and local impacts.
So we have 1 degree global mean temperature increase, while we see a 4-degree increase in the intensity of this heat wave. So that just shows that what actually climate change means can be very different locally from what you sort of think when you think about the global average.
Researchers stress that at current levels of climate change, heat waves like the one experienced last week could become the norm for summers by the middle of this century. Only deep and rapid cuts in carbon emissions, they argue, can avoid this outcome.
Matt McGrath. Coming up in this podcast, Sri Lanka's chief of police has been arrested for failing to prevent the suicide bombings that took place on Easter Sunday. And
Lewis Water at £600,000 all done.
A missing piece of the medieval Lewis chess set is sold at auction for more than $900,000. Princess Haya bint Al Hussein, a wife of the ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed Al Maktoum, is hiding in London and said to be in fear for her life after fleeing her husband. It's a situation that could pose a diplomatic headache for the UK, which has close ties to the UAE. Dan Damon asked our security correspondent Frank Gardner for the details.
It certainly sounds like she is staying in an £85 million, roughly $110 million townhouse, very close to Kensington Palace, in a very exclusive part of London called Kensington Palace Gardens, a house which she owns in her own right, reportedly, having fled from Dubai first to Germany and then to the UK. She was married in 2004 to the ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and they appear to have parted pretty acrimoniously, it seems, because the ruler of Dubai has penned this very angry poem, which he's posted on Instagram. It's in Arabic, and it's, although it doesn't name her personally, certainly all the Arab social media is assuming that it is directed at her. Now, she has interpreted that as a direct threat to her. She's very concerned about it. She's got a legal team. It may well be that there is a legal battle that's going to begin in the High Court. I don't know what the terms of that battle is or what they're going to be fighting over, but the fact is that she has fled Dubai. She is very fearful for her own safety because she fears being abducted. There is no comment from the UAE authorities on this, because other than to say that they don't comment on personal matters between two individuals.
A threat by poetry adds to the story. She fled by sea, is that right?
No, not exactly. We're at risk of conflating two different stories, but you're absolutely right to mention that, because there is a precedent to this, because last year a daughter of the ruler has several wives. This particular princess, who is a friend of the Queen's, by the way, so Princess Haya, who is daughter of King Hussein, she is his sixth wife, and she is the younger wife. She's 45. There is an older wife, 57, Princess Hind. One of the daughters by another wife posted a video, which you may remember, somebody called Sheikha Latifa, and she said she was desperately unhappy, she was suffering abuse, and she wanted to flee palace life. With the help of a Frenchman, she fled by sea from Dubai to India. She got as far as the coast just off Mumbai, where she was intercepted by, we were told, commandos, but basically armed mercenaries, and returned to Dubai. And there was then this very strange scene where Mary Robinson, the former Irish president, endorsed the Dubai view that she'd actually been rescued from an abduction. That appears now to be perhaps something a bit more sinister.
Frank Gardner speaking to Dan Damon. One of the most talked about new plays on the London stage is Ex Adra, featuring stories of torture and brutality in Syrian prisons. But the women who star in Ex Adra are not professional actors. They are former prisoners detained by the government of Bashar al-Assad at various points over the past 3 decades. Rodri Davis went to meet them.
During my detention, they forced me to do a televised confession, confessing that we organized demonstrations. The only thing I wanted was to put an end to my torture.
Mariam Haid is recounting her experiences at the hands of Syrian interrogators. She was jailed for a year for her involvement in the country's revolution, sparked during the Arab Spring in 2011.
I agreed to film because I was exhausted from the torture to be honest. And I wanted to let my